Okay, so welcome to the next in the series of the GigCX Decoded podcast. This is brought to you by Limitless. I'm the host. My name's Chris. I've got the job of Chief Sales and Marketing Officer here at the good ship Limitless. And the objective of this podcast, as always, is to just help provide more information and education. And the way that we do that is to bring on people to this podcast that are far cleverer than myself. And today is no exception, and not just one person on this podcast. We've doubled up. So we're really pleased to welcome Vinay and Julian from McKinsey. In case anybody doesn't know who McKinsey are, I can't imagine anyone listening to this has never heard of McKinsey, but common referred to as the oldest and most established management consultancy firm, one of the big three. I think nearly 100 years in tenure as a business. So Vinay, Julian, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks a lot. Actually, we are very pleased that you invited us. And we're very excited also about the topic about GigCX. And that's why, very looking much forward to the next 20 minutes.
Good stuff. So what I've just noticed there, which is different to all the other podcasts I've done, because we've got two people, is I need to make sure I say, Julian, over to you, or Vinay, over to you. So there we go. There's a nod to me as we get through this. So I'll make sure that we do that to make this conversation flow a bit more. But before we go into sort of the questions, so Vinay, you're currently in Boston. We were just having a chat offline about gig, and it sounds like you're a massive proponent of the gig economy as well. But it's great to have you on the show. Perhaps you can just give a quick introduction to you and your role at McKinsey.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris, for having me. I'm a senior expert based out of Boston. Been with the firm for more than 10 years now. Most of my work is in the customer care space, where I help organizations transform their contact center by bringing new and innovative thinking. So very excited about this podcast as well.
Brilliant. And Julian, yourself, quick intro, be great.
Absolutely. Actually, I lead in Europe in the service operations practice all our work around customer engagement and customer operations. And I'm partner with McKinsey, joined 2005. And when I say service operations practice, actually you said McKinsey Management Consulting, we're actually very much known for classic strategy, but only few people know that about 30 to 35% of what we do as a firm today is operations work. Right. It can be manufacturing, but in our case, service operations. So especially how to interact with customers, everything from the digital journey until like really how to set up and enable agents and call center people to deliver great experiences.
End to end. Wow. Well, I guess at the moment, as we stand here today, where are we? We're on the 8th of February, check my calendar, and right in the middle of what we'll probably look back on in years to come as the big sort of technology layoff, right? We're seeing thousands and thousands of people being let go from some of the big technology firms, the pressure that's putting on to organizations to continue to operate, to still provide service, to try and differentiate. We are riding the wave, I think, of the first announcement of ChatGPT has come into everyone's vocabulary and the impact that this might have. So anyone listening to this is where we're at right now, and who knows where we'll be in months to come. But Vinay, let me come to you first. So what are the big things that are affecting the CX industry right now? What would you say to that?
Yeah, sure, Chris. Thanks for asking this. I think there are multiple trends that are impacting, right? And three comes to my mind. One is about the level of complexity and number of interactions that are increasing over the years, right? Everyone thought contact centers is going to be a dead channel, but the reality is opposite of that. We are seeing more and more people interacting with contact center, be it live channel, be it digital channels. So even live interaction has gone up, right? And then not only just the interaction, the complexity of those interaction also has gone up significantly, because as more people interact on digital channels, their simple queries are being answered right now through digital, but they have more technically or complex inquiries that requires a human being. So the complexity has gone up, right? So that is theme number one or trend number one. Second trend we are seeing, as you articulated, Chris, there's a really emphasis on talent. Most of the CX industry is struggling with talent. It's people are finding it hard to onboard people, train people, even retain a lot of employees as well. So that is the second big theme across all the contact center, be it BPOs, be it in-house. Everyone is just going through it. And the third theme I would just say is use of these next generation operating model powered by some of these AI tools, right? So, for example, think about a new way of workforce management, which Gig is core part of it. Think about a new way of agent coaching, which people have started to which things like speech analytics, real-time coaching. So there's just too much going on. So in my view, just to summarize, talent, increased complexity of interactions, and new operating model is the big takeaways.
New stuff. Julian, your perspective?
I think Vinay covered it very well. I think the core element is when you go about a year back and we look into what happened during COVID, right? We see that a lot of customer interaction changed. On the one hand side, we see that more digitalization of businesses did not lead to less contact volumes, but to higher contact volumes. We saw that certain elements came into getting to more spiky call volumes and so on. And these effects actually led to new ways how companies started thinking about how to deploy workforce, how to go and use technology as an enabler to exactly tackle these kind of topics.
Great. Well, I mean, it's a good segue into my next question, actually. So, Vinay, you mentioned there that you've seen contacts increasing, the complexity increasing, the difficulties in finding talent, onboarding talent, and keeping talent in a world where there's more pressure on costs, and the complexity of questions coming through is increasing. And there, at the back end of this, there being this new technology that's coming on board. And so you've got, on one hand, you've got more contacts, more complexity, difficulty finding the people. And on the other hand, you've got the advancements in technology, which is there to try and help the people or to even automate some of those things. How do you see GigCX playing a role within that in against those sort of challenges or those trends?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think GigCX is going to play a huge role, right? As you articulated, as the demand is changing and the volatility of demand is much higher now as compared to any period we lived in, you need to have a supply or workforce which can meet that demand. And then if you just think about GigCX, it enables organizations to have right people at the right time by leveraging a network of people which are not just doing 8 to 5 kind of shift. So in my view, GigCX will play a huge role in this space.
I think the feedback we consistently hear is that with the customers, with the customers we deal with, their products are increasing in terms of there's more technology advances. With that comes more complexity and more, it's best described as sort of interoperability, right? So all these more products that hit the market, the ecosystems that they work in, so all of the other things they connect to, so whether it's headphones, whether it's gaming, whether it's a smart fridge or anything, they all need to connect to things in order to work. So you end up with more devices, more potential things that could unplug or things not work, and you end up generating more and more contact volumes as a result of these things. And some of those things are very hard to predict. So when you talk about this being another way to provide resource, how do you see GigCX playing a role within the forecasting and scheduling? So within the workforce management area. So I'm a business and I'm thinking about my long-term forecasts for next year, for the remaining of this year. How should they think about GigCX playing a role within that?
Let me take that role.
Yeah.
For me, GigCX is a new way how to balance my workload and how to deploy resources and people on demand. And for example, some of my clients, they will put GigCX next as a third layer, more or less, to their resource base. They have on the one hand side, they have internal resources, that they can plan, and that is always the base load, more or less, that they have, because there they have the competencies. They have also second and third level there. This is the core, more or less, right? The foundation. And then on top of that, they have a certain level of third party, but that also need to announce with quite some leeway. Typically, when we look into, because you asked for workforce management, we look into different cycles, right? We have the long-term planning, the midterm planning. And in the midterm planning, you already have very early in that process to tell the outsourcing providers what kind of skills do you need, when do you need them, what are the after hours, and so on. And also very often still a lot of the outsourcing providers are in the classic model, not in the GigCX model, also have typically 8-hour shifts, sometimes part shifts, but not a lot of flexibility. And then comes the reality. And the reality hits not like 2 months before or even 2 years before, but the reality hits in the day or probably the day before. And the question is how to react to that. And that's why a lot of my clients found GigCX a solution, especially to react into circumstances that they could not predict on the long term. So what they do is they have a very fluent GigCX layer on top, where they have also people working potentially 2-hour shifts, 3-hour shifts, 4 and 6 other shift models that otherwise it's very, very difficult also to deploy. And also often very flexible. For example, one of my clients, they have a GigCX workforce where they have 5,000 people in there that they more or less like in a day still can ask if they can join if there's something going wrong. For example, one of my telco clients, if an area is down and the IP network died, in this moment, typically call volumes spike as hell and they can pull them in. But also in the planning, even if a little bit like more clear and more predictable things, like, for example, supermarkets, or tech stores.
Right.
What we see there is often is on Monday morning, 9-10 o'clock, when they open or shortly before they open, we see huge spikes, like 5 times higher than during the normal day. What they have done in the past is they just ignored it and took the hit on service level. But now with GigCX, they are able to go and have people exactly planned in for a very short period of time of 2 hours, where they really are able and to handle this workload and to help the people to understand opening hours, product availability, total different customer experience.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point around the flexibility that there's a number of benefits to GigCX, and we'll try not to make this a sales pitch. But one of the benefits that our customers talk about is the ability to absorb additional planned or even unplanned volume, because in a fixed model, as you'll be acutely aware, you have people working 8-hour shifts, and there's a productivity element to that. There's only so much percentage you can get out of them being productive. Typically anything more than 80% is when you've got someone that's working too much. But then you don't want them working less than 60% because you're not utilizing them as much as possible. So you're trying to find that middle ground. When you then inject moments where there might be downtime and then you've got a spike in volume, there's only so much that fixed model can absorb with overtime or trying to get a bit more out of them. Whereas gig is like the analogy of Uber drivers going to an airport, right? When there are loads of flights coming in, there are loads of Uber drivers ready to take you, or Lyft drivers, or other able to take you where you want to go. If there are no flights coming in, then they'll go and do something else. But you don't have to suffer the penalty of unproductive hours or take the hit on service level. There's that elasticity in it, which I find fascinating. But I'm always interested to hear and from how people would consider this when they're planning for it. If you think the old ways of WFM planning is you need to put into a model, whether it's Erlang C or simulation-based forecasting, to say, this is the amount of demand we think is going to come in. Here is how many people I need in your shifts. How does a WFM planner think about GigCX in that world? Because they might be thinking about, in their old world, they're thinking shifts, they're thinking people, they're thinking resources. How do you coach people to think about GigCX from forecasting? I don't know who wants that one. Vinay, is that for you?
Yeah, I can take this one. So, Chris, I think your point is right? So, forecasting is becoming increasingly complex these days. Gone are the days that you can rely on your historical data and try to predict the future exactly with 95% accuracy or 98% accuracy. Every organization we are working with struggling with predicting the future contact volume. Uh, and then some of the recommendation we first of all make is just try to understand the ecosystem, not just rely on historical contact volume. Try to understand what are the broader trends that are happening within customer preferences, customer adoptions of their digital channels, just to make it first a little bit more better, right? So that forecasting can be more accurate at a monthly level, daily level, or even at an interval level, right? So that is the first part. But the second part, we always recommend our clients is just to have that flexibility, because your forecasting is not going to be 100% accurate. Even if you try, you have all the data in the world and you have all the right techniques. And that's where I think some GigCX could play a really important role, because as you think about, if your Mondays you predicted with a 90% accuracy, there's just still that 10% part which you don't know what volume might meant, right? Even it could be on day of the week, it could be on day of the month, it could be on month of the year, right? Depending on which industry you are in. So I think every organization needs to buffer in that additional capacity, which could be deployed on a moment's notice. Some organizations do have that visibility a little bit. So, for example, let's talk about a retail company which would probably see a high spikes during Christmas or New Year. They would know that they need to have a lot many more people to handle those contact volume on a short notice. But at the same time, they still don't know what that volume might look like, because every year has been different. So that's where we recommend and suggest our clients to kind of take into account that flexibility while designing their scheduling and planning.
I feel the WFM planners, I mean, how they, like you said, that what's certain is things are becoming more unpredictable. So how they can, be able, and its thing is, it's not just making decisions on the fly, like on the day, intraday management. It's also how I've got to think about how many people I'm going to need in. If the average onboarding time to productivity might, is typically 6 weeks, 10 weeks, you're in that sort of time frame. How to right, we've got to start recruiting, we've got to start onboarding, you got to deal with attrition at the same time, and then bring them on. I take my hat off to anyone that's a WFM planner. I've got a question for you, which is probably one I should have asked at the front, but I'm always intrigued by this, which is, and Julian, I'm going to come to you for this one. If so you meet someone and someone say, and they ask you a question, which is, what is GigCX? How would you describe to somebody what GigCX is?
That's a very, very good question, actually. For me, to put it simply, in a customer care context, replicating the on-demand model and translate into GigCX. Specifically, there are two main models that we see. It is, in the end, about having people who have a certain capability to deliver calls, organized ideally through a digital platform that enables them to deliver the services. And that's why when I compared very much with, you mentioned Hailride. Yeah, I think there are also similars for handyman work. Yeah, there are some for cleaning. Yeah, so for me, it's a way how to tap resources that we would normally not be able to tap in other way, right? So we have people who have the ability, for example, to deliver very specific capabilities also in a contact center, for example. One of my clients was looking to consult on games, because they're a huge media chain and they had all of these kind of games, but they couldn't educate every person on every kind of game. And so they were looking for experts. And they found actually quite some in the gaming community. So they found people who went with a GigCX model while they were not gaming and so on, while they wanted to earn some money, and they had 2, 3, 4 hours. They were saying, okay, I'm consulting other people in the community on games.
Yeah.
And that's these kind of people, without GigCX, they would not have been approachable, because they wouldn't have most likely gone to a contact center, or even probably every day worked 8 hours in a row, with some break in the middle, like in a classic call center environment. And tapping these kind of capabilities is interesting. The second part of is there are people who are much more flexible, who want to work certain hours, but who don't want to have these like very clear 8-hour shift. Students, for example, where they have some kind of lectures, but when the lectures actually are changed week by week, so they can't commit every day. I come for 5 hours somewhere. But this could be a very interesting resource. The 5,000 that I mentioned, for example, had been a lot of students. And yes, you have to train them, you have to onboard them, and so on. But also on the attrition game, it's not so difficult to keep them, because they stay in your universe and you offer them work, and then they come and work. And probably the third element is that we often forget is it's not only about external people that we bring into this, and it can also be actually already actual employees. For example, one of my banking clients, they found that in their branches, they didn't have all the workload for the whole day, that they needed all the people that are in the branch system. But what they should do in a branch, they can do some paperwork, but not very effective. So what they did is, but on the other hand side, they had really capabilities on sales and consulting and so on. And so they built a internal CX model where people could were more scheduled into a flexible model, but not for many hours, but typically 1.5 hours, 2 hours for specific tasks, for specific knowledge that they have that potentially no one else in the company had. And so they could provide it remotely from the place, in the work environment, in the flow of work. And this is only able through these kind of GigCX thinking.
Yeah. I'm interested in that. That sounds fascinating. What's been the feedback from those that are doing that additional work?
Actually, it was mostly positive. You always have mixed, right? But when I talked to people, 90% liked it. Why?
Yeah.
Because it was a different experience. It also a little bit took them out of the context that they are always, in the way how they work normally, into providing something on top of that to customers. And typically the people in branches are typically very customer oriented, and they felt they can do something good, something positive. On top of that, they felt valued, because they were asked specifically for their knowledge, for the specific knowledge that they could share. So they found, okay, I have something valuable to contribute, which is so special that I'm in the system. So the most feedback was positive. 10% potential says, oh, it's additional workload. Potentially I would have made a break or something like that. But the absolute majority of people loved it.
I mean, that's brilliant. That's I love to hear those sorts of things, because they echo. I mean, the feedback we get as well from the experts is not just the flexibility; it's the contribution that people can bring. And you're talking around students as an example. When we every year we bring out an annual report, which the next one's due in a few months or so. But when we do that, we send a survey to the expert community, and we ask a whole bunch of questions. Right? It always amazes us about what level of qualification they've got, how many languages they speak, and what they do. But the one thing we're always asking is, what do you do mostly? And stay-at-home parents, students, retirees, others that are doing full-time work, like you mentioned your client there, they're doing this as a bit of a side hustle. So it democratizes the whole way in which work is delivered. And I've always got this catchphrase of, don't stop trying to take people to work, send the work to the people. You can broadcast the work in a different way. And the contribution that people get from it is that feeling of worth and that value, like you mentioned, that they're doing something that they can clearly see is a direct correlation to helping. They're not just on a conveyor belt. They're not just on a hamster wheel where they come in, spend time and go home. They're being asked to come and do something specific because they've been able to demonstrate a certain set of skills, or they're already a customer. And I'm fascinated again by this advancement in having customers helping customers. They've already chosen to be in this world where loyalty is so liquid these days. All of the companies where you offer you have your relationship with them is typically subscription based, or you can pivot to another organization so quickly. So loyalty is really hard to hold on to.
Absolutely.
And one of the ways you can do that is your relationship with them. So you say, well, look, you've chosen to be a customer of ours. So PlayStation, for example, one of our clients, right? There are millions and millions of gamers out there, and they've chosen to be a PlayStation gamer, and then they're saying, we also would like you to enroll to become a PlayStation brand ambassador to help other PlayStation customers. So there's this wonderful circular economy effect, which is the expert gamers are then helping other gamers. They're far less likely to go onto another platform, so they're far more likely to stay. They're far more likely to advocate to other people, friends and family, when you're thinking about NPS scores as well. It's hard to measure the long term, but it just makes sense from that side. But I think what you've mentioned there about giving people something that makes them feel valued in today's world is liquid gold, and I think it's brilliant. Next question I have for you, Vinay, I'm going to come to you for this one. So we talk about, and I'm very guilty of this as well, and we roll GigCX off the tongue all the time, but I'm aware that gig can sometimes have a bit of a stigma in the industry. What's your take on that? Do you think it has a stigma, and what's your thoughts around people's perception of the word gig?
Yeah, so I think times are changing, Chris, right? It used to be when people think about gig, they used to think about low-paying jobs, the limited salaries, limited skills, those kind of things, right? But as we were just going through this discussion, I hope our audience is realizing it's not about any kind of payment or low-paying jobs, or it's not about no skills. It's all about meeting the demand in a very flexible way, right? And that demand can come from any particular way. We have seen examples of contact centers hiring a lot of skilled agents to meet them, right? And sometimes these skilled agents need a lot of expertise to reach to a level so that they can cater to the customer's demand, right? So what I'm seeing is there's a change in the mindset, and it's a journey. So now people are realizing that over the time, gig will become more and more prominent, and then hopefully the stigma will go away.
So what I'm hearing there, I'll come to you. In fact, Julian, go on. You love your perspective on that.
No, absolutely. I think the key challenge that is there is to overcome the challenges of the system. Because when you look at GigCX, obviously it has also some downsides to manage. Let's frame it like that. One is surely security, data security, privacy, and so on. Especially when I talk to my banking clients and saying, oh, this is really difficult because I spread so much information to people that to more people than before. And so I need to put even more rigorous mechanisms in place. It doesn't mean that it's not working, because work from home is also possible. And if work from home generally is possible for many organizations, why shouldn't be GigCX? But still, there's a little bit like the feeling I can't control these people as good as I can control the people that I have full on my employee list. That's one thing to manage and also to overcome when you communicate and when you discuss about it. The second part is surely still on as Vinay said it, the world is getting more, and you also said it, by the way, the world getting more complex. We see home automation coming, to telcos go into connecting fridges together with your dishwasher and so on. So a complete new complexity of things that you want to manage. And so many clients ask, hey, we invest up to 3, 4, 5 months into every of our employees to get them up to speed to really know everything about or answer on the phone. Why should I invest it in people who only work 2 hours here, 5 hours there, and where I'm not sure how long they will stay with me? And I always tell them, look, in today's world of attrition, it's also not that the employees will stay with you for multiple years. We see a lot of BPO providers having 180% attrition.
Wow.
So annually. So this means you also have a very short period of time and you have to be more profound in training. And the second part is technology will help or is already helping to, on the one hand side, speed up the whole learning experience for people, so the onboarding. And on the other hand side is also augmenting people with information, with, for example, having smart chatbots where they can ask questions and get answers very quickly. So there's an opportunity. And thirdly, as already said, it's not only about having flexible and cheap workforce, it is actually also having experts, very spiky, on a certain period of time that you can attach. So actually it might be even the answer to the problem and not one of the challenges. And this, but these kind of things we have to discuss because it's not as intuitive in the first moment. Everybody understands ride hail because what you need to do, you need to be able to drive. Everybody understands food delivery because in the end you need to pick up food and deliver something. So your competence is also a little more like being able to drive and probably ride a bike and so on. Here, you need to have much more. But that's a part of GigCX. GigCX is also people providing expertise through online platforms on demand. Yeah, very highly paid people. And so there's a whole range. And we are here in the customer care environment, somewhere in the middle layer, where there is an expertise-based game.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I've heard there is, going back to Vinay, what you said at the start, but, great from your perspective, Julian, is the perceptions have changed around gig being originally people thought this was just a low cost labor market alternative. Now it's becoming a bit more synonymous with finding the right talent. And that's a mind shift. And the benefit that can bring from your point, Julian, is absolutely, from our perspective as well, spot on. So I guess, as we approach the end of this, I'll be interested in your personal or professional opinion really about where you think GigCX, what the future is. Do you think, and I guess perhaps to help frame that, do you think it's going to go, and do you think it's going to stay? Do you think it's going to, or do you think it's going to grow? What was your perspective on that, Julian? I'll come to you first.
I can tell you my personal opinion, and my personal opinion is that it will grow.
Okay.
It's actually we are still at a point where people start understanding and digesting the opportunities that you have through GigCX.
Right.
And it provides so many answers on challenges that we see today that I would be extremely surprised. On top of that, also when you look around and when you look at circular economy, when you look at how also work behaviors and work preferences are changing with more flexibility and so on, you will also find an increasing amount of people who want to work in such an environment. Yeah. And that's why when you look at the increasing demand and on a willingness to supply, I believe it will grow.
Vinay, what do you think?
Yeah, because I also believe it's going to grow. I think there were earlier, a couple of years back, there were barriers to the adoption of GigCX, which were related to, let's say, technology challenges. Now, most of the organizations have overcome how to make people work from home, right? Now, more and more people want to have flexibility in their life, be it even full-time employee, they want to have flexibility in their life so that they can work whenever they want. So seeing those kind of trends, I'm pretty positive that it's going to grow because demand is there. And at the same time, the discussion we had around this ton of volatility in the demand that's happening. And it's going to just increase more and more as we go into the uncertain future. So by that, all of these circumstances would lead to more adoption of GigCX. Fantastic.
Well, we could talk for hours around this, and you can sense a passion from both sides of the screen here around what it can do, and that's why I'm here, right? I'm a big advocate of this model myself. So I've heard lots of great things there, and clearly this is the conversations you're having with your customers. I can hear your predictions are the contacts are increasing, the complexity is increasing. The volatility on demand, the pressures on attrition within organizations is putting the pressure on traditional systems. But on the other side, you've got people wanting to work in this way, people now being more able to work in this way with the advancement of technology that's allowing people to work in this freelancer economy and the wonderful aspects of all of that. And you're sounds like your predictions are that it's gonna grow, and I hope it does for obvious reasons. But that's why we're in this game. But it's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate both of your inputs. It's often difficult to do these with two because I have to flick between the two. But hopefully that's been a good conversation. And to anyone listening, how would they be able to get hold of you to learn any more? Julian, do you want to give some credits, and how do they get hold of you?
Also, I think the easiest way to connect with us is either through LinkedIn. Yeah, both of us are there, and we're also publishing frequently on the most relevant topics. For example, just recently on busting myths on contact center operations, or through McKinsey.com, where we also published an article on GigCX recently. And so there's also our contact details, and we always look forward to people who want to discuss and who have perspectives, because I think it's an amazing topic, and you see also this side of the screen, like being extremely interested and very also curious to different opinions. And that's why we are always open for people reaching out. Actually, look forward for people reaching out to us.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're well established to help people on their GigCX journey. If people are interested in what to do, how to look at it, how to embed it in their organizations, technically as well as from a service perspective. So anyone's interested in that, they can come to you, and no doubt you'll help them on the journey. So it's been a great conversation, and I really appreciate both of your time. These things are, time is precious, and your perspectives are really valuable to anyone listening as we go on. We'll be publishing the show notes, and people can download this, and then anyone listening wants to find out more, they can go to McKinsey.com, or they can go to limitlesstech.com, and we look forward to the next show. We'll bring on more people that have their perspectives on this wonderful industry that we're all in. But for now, Vinay, Julian, thank you for your time, and I wish you the best for the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you so much.